evening. This is Frank McNeil with Talk of the Town, and glad to be back with you. And unfortunately, this week, 2 days ago, we had an unfortunate situation in the city of Springfield, and I just want to say his name, Keon Day. Unfortunately, the rash of violence has struck again in Springfield. And unfortunately, another young man is gone. And I want to say uh, my prayers to his family and to the students at Southeast High School and the teachers, because this is a traumatic experience. And I just think that we are better than this, and we've got to do better than this. So, to the Day family and those people around him, Godspeed, and hopefully you can get through this. It's hard, and I'm looking forward to working with the family and anybody who wants to reduce the incidence of violence, and not only violence, but death. You know, how do I say? Back in the day, you had a fist fight, you got dirty, but you walked away, and you may not like that individual, but they lived to talk about it. And I can remember a young man I used to get into it with, and we had a thing where every day about 1 o'clock, there was a little corner store, and I'd walk to the corner store, and he'd be there, and we would fight. And one day I got the best of him, one day he got the best of me, but every day until we finally realized it was senseless to fight every day. And so we ended up being friends. But it was the idea that we had to fight. And now it is not fighting anymore, it's killing. And we're losing young people to senseless violence. And I don't know what Keon could have done to make two cars roll up on him, as we say, and shoot. Not very much courage there in that car, because why didn't you get out and fight? That's a sad commentary. I'm saying, isn't it terrible that I got to talk about fighting, because the alternative is someone is dead now because somebody shot and killed him. And in my former days on radio, I talked about this over and over again. Somebody knows who did this, and it's time to turn them in. Keon deserves justice. His family deserves justice. Turn them in. They know the cars, so those individuals who perpetrated this act, you're going to get caught, and you're going to jail. And see, this is the thing about violence. Now, those individuals in both of those cars are going to be charged, and it's murder now. You're going to go to jail, and for a long time. Now, not only is Keon's family affected, but the shooter's family is affected. And I'm sure whoever did this, if their family is protecting them, it's not going to do any good, because eventually they're going to get caught. Somebody's going to tell. And your family is going to be affected, because your loved one is going to be taken away and locked away for a substantial period of time. What do we do? How do we do this? There is funding out there for violence prevention. The outlet, Mike Phelan, has done a great job of trying to get the younger people to reduce the violence, giving them opportunities and activities to do. There are other programs out, but unfortunately, we seem not to get the real perpetrators of this violence engaged enough, and then access to guns. We're still dealing with an issue of access to guns. Probably no one in that car, I don't know what the ages of them were, but they probably could not acquire a firearm legally. So how did they get it? So ladies and gentlemen, Springfield has had a history of these shootings, and thankfully, let me say to the young people out there that the incidence of violence has, up until a couple of days ago, had been reduced. I hadn't been talking about who got shot and turning them in. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, sisters, brothers, if your family and friends are engaged in this activity, it's time to stop it. And it's time that we be more proactive in policing our own community. And that's what it's about. Policing our own community. We get policed enough. But why is it that somebody has to come in our community to tell us how to act? We know how to act. We know what's wrong, right and wrong. And we continue to seem to act so out of character, and that's what it is. We act so out of character that, you don't want the police in the community. You don't trust the police. Well, don't do the things that bring the police in the community. And then more of us should be willing to step out and say, hey, let's reach out to these young people. Let's try to find out what's going on with them. Let's try to say to them, hey, if you need someone to help you out, if you need someone to talk to, if you got a problem, there are solutions out there. Sometimes everything is not going to be easy. Everything's not going to be easy when you come to life. Life is difficult. We do things, we get involved in things, we work toward things, we have goals and objectives, and we try to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to make life better for the community in Springfield. So I can only ask you in the community out there to please step up, reach out, help someone, lend a helping hand. We sometimes think, well, that's old fashioned. I don't want to do that anymore. Well, sometimes we need to call our community together and have a community meeting. We need to let people express themselves. We need to let people have an opportunity to say what's on their mind. What are we going to do? How do we do it? We have leadership in this community. There are people who will step out there and lend a helping hand, but somebody has to be the catalyst. Let's use the unfortunate loss of life of Keon Day to bring this community back together. Let's use it. Let's build upon him. Say his name. Keep him alive. Give his family support. But man, we can do better than what we're doing. And if we're going to be the beacon of light that turns this community into a better community, somebody is going to have to sacrifice. There is no progress without sacrifice, people. Somebody has to do something. Somebody has to give up something. And as long as we sit and say it's not my problem, it is your problem. Because you never know when it's going to knock on your door. When your nephew, your niece, your cousin, your brother may be the victim of senseless violence. So we all are affected. And so we're going to talk tonight about some other things that are in this community that we need to put a cap on. But right now, I just think that we need to say some prayers, give a helping hand to the Day family, because it's got to be painful. And this is something that no one wants to have to face. On the way to school, on the track team, football team, trying to do things to make his life better. What could he have done? What could he have done that required somebody to shoot him and kill him? You have to ask yourself that. What was so important that two cars of individuals had to ride up on him and shoot? I mean, I asked myself, what was so important that they had to, what was so devastating that they had to shoot this young man and kill him? Why couldn't they just say, hey, okay, I don't like you, Keon. Let's put up your hands. And it's sad that, we're talking about violence here. Fighting is violence. But maybe Keon would have walked home with a bloody nose, a black eye, busted lip, had a few, but you go back to school the next day and you keep on going. But unfortunately, Keon will never go back to school, never go back to Southeast. He's no longer with us. And it's sad. It's sad that we cannot resolve problems without death. We have ways to solve problems short of going and getting a gun and taking the life of an individual. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take a break right here. I had to give my sponsor, Sangamon Watch. Go down and get a watch, talk to Brian. And if you have an issue with your watch, he can fix it. Well, not he. Brian doesn't repair, but he has a repair shop now. So you not only can buy a great watch, but you can get a watch repaired. You can get your wristbands repaired. You can get your watches cleaned. You can get a battery replaced. All of those things at Sangamon Watch at 206 South 6th Street. And I'm going to take a pause for the cause. Good afternoon, good evening, and how are you? Again, this is Frank McNeil back with Talk of the Town, and we're going to talk about something that's been talked about for a number of years, and is still going on. And the community is getting a little tired of it, and we are talking about pop-up parties. And I know the residents on the east side are very familiar with pop-up parties because they've been somewhat of a new phenomenon, but they're beginning to spread around town a little bit. And Chief Ken Scarlett is trying to figure out a way to shut them down and shut them down quickly. And but they're so, how should I say? They just pop up. You don't have an idea. They're scouring social media to try to figure out where and when these things are going to happen, but they're so spontaneous. They just happen. People run into you on it. Let's go over here and let's pull up, and somebody has a stereo in the car, and man, do they have stereos in the cars these days that can really blast. And cars pull up, and all of a sudden there's a party, and it's a loud party, and there's drinking, and there's other activities going on. And people in the neighborhood, unfortunately have a situation where they try to do their best they can to do what they can to stop these things, but they're somewhat limited. And I'm going to take a break right here. I got a little. Good evening again, and I'm back. I had a little technical difficulty, but I'm back now, and I'm going to continue the talk of the town, and we're talking about pop-up parties, and boy, they've been pretty pervasive around Springfield, and now they're getting out and getting around, and people are becoming a little bit annoyed, quite a bit annoyed, and they don't want them in their neighborhoods. They are a major distraction, and it's quite frankly fairly dangerous, very dangerous. And again, I think Chief Scarlett is trying to do his best, but on Friday and Saturday nights and Sunday nights, sometimes when these things occur, it makes him scramble his police force and the coverage for the city, because these large gatherings require a number of police officers. You don't want to go undermanned. And so and I talked about the issue with 3 o'clock licenses and the county shutting down 3 o'clock licenses. And this has nothing to do with 3 o'clock licenses, because these pop-up parties are occurring whether there's a 3 o'clock license or not, and should not be put into play to say we should do away with 3 o'clock licenses because of pop-up parties. They're two totally different things. And I think there is an opportunity for the city of Springfield to continue to move forward, look at if we're going to deal with this situation of pop-up parties. They have to sit down with the state's attorney and possibly the state senator Doris Turner and state representative and Mike Coffey, and talk about these things, and Sue Sher, because it may require state legislation, because local ordinances sometimes need a little bit more push, and I think maybe it may require a change in state law in order to deal with these things, because they're going to be they're going to start being an issue all over the state. It's not just going to be Springfield. These things are going to grow, and they're not going to be limited to just Springfield. They're going to go all over the state. And so we probably need to deal with this on a holistic kind of way, that dealing with it with state law, so that you'll have some teeth, and local ordinances, while they're there to be adhered to, sometimes they don't carry the same weight as state law. And it gives the police department, sheriff's department, and what other law enforcement entity a little bit more opportunity and a little bit more teeth to go out and say, hey, you're in violation of this statute and not this ordinance. But what do you think out there? I'm a little bit perturbed about pop-up parties, because unfortunately, and the first I've heard of these, they originated over in my ward back in the day, and needless to say, it was difficult to deal with them then, and because it was a situation where it was at most of the time Road Ranger out on South Grand, or the 16th and Cook. Those service stations seemed to be the gathering place for lack of a better term, a pop-up party. And thankfully, the service stations knew that this was a deterrent for business, so they took whatever action they needed to. And a lot of course, was additional police coming in to shut these things down. You have a lot of, you have a lot of drinking, a lot of loud music, dancing, which is nothing wrong with busting a move here and there, but you can't bust a move on somebody else's property, and you can't drink on somebody else's property, and you can't imbibe yourself with the herb of the day, and you need to do what you can to turn down the music. And so all of these things, and these are most of the time in neighborhoods, and there are people who, whether you believe it or not, do work, and they want to get some rest. They don't want to have to listen to, someone screaming and yelling and, calling out names, and the music, unfortunately, is extremely loud. So we want to stop these pop-up parties and try to find alternatives. Let's put it this way, of what young people can do. It's not all young people. There's some older people that cruise through, checking it out just to see what's going on, and then they go back and say, "Hey, man, those guys are really out of control there." If you see a pop-up party, drive away from it. Don't go to it, because you become a part of the problem as trying to see what's going on. You're part of that problem. And I hope that we can get, again, it takes community support to get these things resolved. You just can't rely on the police department to say, we're going to get the police to out here and that's going to stop everything. No, it's not going to stop everything. It's going to take some community vigilance. It's going to take some, I think, real thought to deter these young people. And unfortunately, the punishment's got to bite a little bit. And I'm not one for, being overly abusive to young people for just going out trying to have a good time. But you can't have a good time at somebody else's expense and think that you can just ride into a neighborhood, create a disturbance, wake people up, trash it. And that's the other part, trashing. Sean Gregory, Ward 2 Alderman, Roy Williams, myself, we've cleaned up a few after a few pop-up parties. We've responded, previously to the pop-up parties, and they're not fun. They're not fun to clean up after somebody who just literally trash your neighborhood. And so that's where I believe that noise ordinance, we have a noise ordinance that we can enforce, and we can enforce private property and in the parks, public property, blocking streets. You have to use all the tools that are available to stop these things from happening. Now, there are plenty places, not plenty, but there are a number of places for young people to go now. You can't go to the bars, if you're not 21 years old. No. But I think there has to be some ideas floated around where people create venues. You got the proms. Well, I know that's only 1 or 2 nights a year, but there has to be more for younger people to do. And I think that one of the things that the police department, the city of Springfield, and the aldermen can look at is, and how do we drive these young people to different venues? And as some part, the city has to create some venues for them to go to. Park District closes at around 10, 11 o'clock. You have to be out of the parks. And 9, 10 o'clock, But what time should a 17, 18-year-old go home? That's the question. How do we, is it parental involvement saying that to the young person that's got his car now and they're out and about? Is it 10 o'clock? Is it 11 o'clock? Is it 12 o'clock that they have to be at home with the car? You got to set some standards. And some of these people, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, riding around, that's a little bit over the top. So I think that pop-up parties in and of themselves are a nuisance. And because they create problems in somebody else's neighborhood and they disturb the peace and enjoyment of that neighborhood and they trash the neighborhood. And so giving tickets, citations, and for littering and all those kind of things, and sometimes that might be a deterrent. It might work. It might stop some of these young people from coming out and getting engaged with this. And I think it's a novelty also. I think a lot of people are just there for the novelty of seeing what somebody else may do. And as they say, reckless gawking, if you want to say, people out there just wanting to see, go home and, do something constructive. But being out there on the street, being out there trying to see the sights and sounds of a pop-up party and do something. Put up no trespassing signs on your private property. And if somebody comes on your property, please don't go out, because that's not going to be a good solution. You can yell at them and say, hey, get off my property, like the old man, get out of my yard, and then call the authorities. Don't try to engage these young people, because we don't want anything to happen to you seniors and myself and people out here who want to take a responsible attitude toward it. But getting engaged and yelling and screaming and creating intents where somebody threatens you and then all of a sudden we have another lethal situation, we don't want that. That is not the way to get it done. I'm encouraging everybody out there who listens to call your local. I think they still have the neighborhood police, and some of you guys know your neighborhood police officer. Call them up and have a conversation. Create yourself the neighborhood watch and get your officer. And when you call, they are more responsive like that, because they know who you are and they know what you're calling about, and you're not just being flippant. So those are the kinds of things that I recommend to do. And when you see the pop-up party start, call the police department, get them engaged. And, if you got cameras, let them access your cameras because they can get license plates. And some of these people are a little taxing of their ability to drive the car. And parents, if your kid gets caught at a pop-up party at 1:32 in the morning, and the police license plate readers got it, or the local neighborhoods got it, hey, you got to walk for a couple of weeks, because you're at a pop-up party at this time, and I don't appreciate that. So it takes a collective effort to do something about these things, and I think that parents got to step up. If you know your kids zooming around these pop-up parties, take some action. Do something. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm done for the night. Appreciate you listening in. And do go by Boyd's New Generation restaurant and see Tammy and Steve and Chasla, and get something good to eat at Boyd's New Generation on South Grand. All right, ladies and gentlemen, see you next week.